My name is Stanley Rigaud. I'm with the Miami-Dade Beacon Council, and I'll be moderating this panel here. And we have Nabil Malouli, who is with DHL. Nabil is the Vice President of E-commerce for DHL. Gary Goldfarb is the Chief Strategic Officer for Interport Groups. And Maurice Jenkins is with the airport, and I'm not exactly sure what his role is, but when he gets up here, he's going to tell us about what he does. The key thing to understand about these three panelists is that they are extremely important to the industry, the trade and logistics industry or the supply chain industry. Obviously, everybody knows DHL. Everybody understands the importance of the airport. And we've got a huge third-party logistics provider, freight forwarder, all of that. So it's good to kind of get a better understanding of what industry experts who have been doing this for a long time understand how these emerging technologies are affecting the way they do business. So I'm going to start by asking Maurice Jenkins, who's to my left, with the airport, to just tell us a little bit about what he does at the airport.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Guys, I need a lively crowd, because if not, we're going to be here for a while. It's up to you. All right, there we go. As the IT director for the airport, or CIO, I'm responsible for all of the strategic direction that we take in regards to business security and just all the business acumen that drives technology and business processes within the aviation space. I chair several committees, international committees, looking at writing policy and setting standards for the industry for technology and how we move passengers and cargo safely, efficiently throughout our ecosystem of an airport. So that in a nutshell is my role and responsibility. We can deep dive a little bit more, but that's the 34,000 foot level, no pun intended, as to what my role is.
So before I move to Gary, I just want to remind you that Miami International Airport is the #1 airport in the country for international cargo. Just keep that in mind. It's also the first airport in the country to have been designated a pharmaceutical hub. Gary, a little bit about yourself.
My name is Gary Goldfarb. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Interport Logistics. Chief Strategy Officer means I don't actually do work. I just tell everybody what to do. Not really. But I've been at the forefront of technology and logistics for a very, very, very long time. And I'm looking at this conference and remembering when we started the .com era, and we all created what we thought was going to be the end-all product. My product was better than his product, and so on. And what came out were little pieces that were very useful and still in use today. I salute you, Matthew, because this conference is showing us little pieces that are very useful in our daily lives for the current business that we're handling. And those pieces together will make up what will be maybe the blockchain of the future. Salute you.
Hand that over to Nabil. And
I have a mic.
Nabil?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nabil Malouli. I'm with DHL. I'm responsible for our global e-commerce activities. So what does it mean? E-commerce, I think as most of you are aware and are users, is a major trend. It's a major shift on the way we actually not only purchasing, but on the way forces and traffic and different activities, economic activities are being driven worldwide. And we are putting a specific emphasis on that, so really working with clients around how do we improve their e-commerce strategy and also developing solutions on that across the globe. I'm based here in Florida, but I have a global responsibility. I have to apologize. I will unfortunately have to leave at 2:30 for a quick call, but then I might come back still on time.
Yes, thank you. I was about to say that Nabil may have to leave us.
He was sending me a text message, I think.
Yeah. So I'll start with you, Nabil. So my first question is, let me just get my eyes on. Sorry about that. And there goes the internet. There we go. Okay, give me 1 second. Where are we? There we are. Okay. So my first question to Nabil is, anticipation, huh? This is the internet for you. It was just on and now I don't have it. Let's see if I can make it up myself. So tell me about what's happening at DHL as it relates to using a smart ledger and why that's important to big freight forwarders like yourself.
Well, I think what we heard on the presentation before was really explaining a lot of the aspects of why it's important. What we are seeing at DHL are three main applications around blockchain use. One is for traceability and visibility. Second one is smart contract. And the third one is really around authenticity of anything we are moving, right? I mean, if you think about a movement of freight between Brazil and China, you have more or less 200 communication or transactions between 30 stakeholders. So as you are able to minimize the number of friction through the process, that you are able to really ensure the authenticity of where the freight is coming from, the different transactions that are going through the process, you really have a lot of optimization that can be done there. And optimization in logistics often translates by final cost. At the end, everybody here, when we buy something, we're paying for that cost. So there is a very high potential economic impact as we use the technology to improve. We in DHL are still on the early stage. I think as many companies, if we are really objective, we are at the early stage of proof of concepts, still working on defining where the technology apply, and we also look at this as a way of evolution, probably not an immediate revolution. So I think to Gary's point as to the different pieces, we see, for example, smart contracts being really very powerful as to a tool for helping us minimize accounting and payment and auditing frictions, and that's what we are working on at this point.
Okay, great. Still having trouble with this. So let's move on to Gary. Gary, explain to us why these kinds of emerging technologies is important to large freight forwarders like yourself.
Well, we look at we don't look at blockchain as really an option for us, but we look at a variety of distributed ledgers for certain functions as really valuable, where we are interacting not only within our system but with IoT as well as outside entities. And then all of those posting into maybe a more general ledger with permission-based smart contract ledgers. But we have so many different operations with so many different partners that allowing everybody to have visibility onto that same supply chain is competitively impossible and conflictive. But looking at application with smart is distributed ledgers, small ledgers where everything posts to a ledger, especially devices reporting to a ledger rather than reporting to a main system somewhere that's going to report to another system somewhere. By the time we get the information, it's too late. It speeds up the process. We just finished, and you wanted an example when we spoke to you, we spoke privately, we just finished integrating our system with the Brazilian Post Office and Brazilian Customs for the purpose of creating a pre-clearance in Miami-Dade County. Never been done before.
First one in the country, right?
First one in the world.
First one in the world.
Never been done before. To do that, we had to start using ledgers because there's information that Brazilian Customs is never going to allow us to see. There's information that the Post Office is never going to allow us to see. And then there's information that we don't need to share with either one of them. But there are pieces of information that the three of us do need to share. So and it's still a pilot program. We're still trying to get a handle on it. We're using web service as a way to deliver the data. But that's a classic case as to why these kind of conferences and why this technology is going to take hold. How is it going to take hold? Is it going to be a linear blockchain? I doubt it. But the pieces of it are going to be extremely important. What we saw earlier with Dex Freight and that piece of transaction, that's a piece, and it's only a piece, but it's a valuable piece. So we have to start looking at it, okay, these are little pieces. How do we start implementing the little pieces to get to something complete? And it's going to dramatically change how we do things. But most of us have legacy systems and millions of dollars spent in legacy systems. Nobody's going to rip them up and say, okay, new day. But we'll start aggregating small functions under the new technology and eventually convert.
Agreed. And for Maurice, my internet just came up, so I have my question for you. Is blockchain right for the air transport industry? And we talk about smart contracts, but you move passengers. So how does that all fit together? And one sort of sub-question is, how does blockchain change the typical architecture of technology design for a business?
Wow. They get one question apiece and I get three. I got to figure out when I'm going to work this one. I'm smarter, right? There you go. We'll take the first one first. It's one of the things that we look at, and I guess we start on the last one in regards to the technology piece. And everyone needs to really look and embrace and understand it's not about the technology. It's more so re-engineering and looking at business processes. Are you willing to re-engineer that process? Looking at how you're conducting business today, you need to look to change the way you conduct business. And are you willing to do that? We're so structured and so regimented now that it's been commonplace for how we function today, that with the advent of, let's say, implementing blockchain or implementing new technologies, we're reluctant to make that change. So that process change needs to come into place more so than do I change my technology deck in regards to my architecture needs to be re-engineered. Your business process, you need to look at that. So it's not more of a technology issue than it is a business issue.
Interesting.
The second part, or you go through
second part, yep.
Which was,
where is my second part?
He lost his internet again.
How does blockchain change the typical architecture of technology design for a business? Or the first question, which is,
Is it right for the industry?
how is it right for the air transport industry?
Well, it's a couple of things, and
Knowing that you move passengers as well.
one of the things we did, and I'll give you a use case that's associated with it. I sit on several panels and several chairmanships throughout the world in regards to setting policy and direction for technology and the aviation space. So you're looking to apply blockchain, I got to ask the question, is blockchain right for the ATI, for the air transport industry? And we don't know. But in order to go ahead and evaluate it, and we are stalwart fiduciaries for this industry, is what's new and what's next coming down the pike that we can actually apply to the industry as a whole. And now we're examining blockchain. So one of the things we came up with in the recent use case was we did what's called a flight chain trial. And it's a rarity because one of the biggest problems that you have is data is key. As we all know, it's worth more than gold and oil in today's environment, right? So to be able to get multiple airports and multiple airlines together to actually share data, I'm not sure it's done on the cargo side, but airlines deem to be themselves very proprietary and not wanting to share. So same with cargo. Okay, cool. It's like one big incestuous environment, right? So we look at that I got together with myself, Heathrow Airport, as well as Geneva and 2 airlines. And we all got together and established this instance that we actually shared flight information together. So you truly had one true empirical instance of that transaction of all flight information. Now it says, well, flight information is flight information. What does that mean to me? But if you apply it to this world of rapid growing business and rapid movement and development, that information and that having real-time information in the palm of your hand, readily available, is key to you, especially if you need to make that connecting flight, if you need to go to a particular gate. How many of you have missed a flight because you went to the wrong gate because you had bad information? This fixed that. We got together and we put that in place, and we're still trialing it today. And we created what's called an aviation sandbox, and it's in place today for airlines and airports and a few of providers in the industry. And we're trialing new concepts. And this one in particular, we came up with because we figured we could ramp up a quick instance, and it actually worked. You only had one true, pure, empirical instance of the truth that we all shared. So when you saw what was on the airline database, well, on the airline website, it was the same that was in my airport, the same that was in Geneva, Switzerland's airport, the same that was in London. So that passenger that's traveling, you're only seeing one true instance.
In real time.
In real time of the truth. So that's where the applicability came in. So now what's also happening, and I thank you for having this conference, and I'm going to throw this out to you guys as an instance, because I'm going to need some level of support as well. We're writing what we call a blockchain white paper for the industry that will go out to every airport director in the world. And I sit on and I chair this committee that we're writing this document in regards to where does blockchain fit. So this one instance seems to work.
That's a huge opportunity for the people in this room.
So we want to look at more because we want to publish this, that where does this move to drive passengers, and cargo. And I'll throw you two numbers before I hand over the mic, is in today's environment, we move over 4.5 billion people today. In the next 15 years, we're supposed to move 9 billion people globally. Globally, 9 billion people. How effectively can we do that safely and securely and ensure passenger/customer satisfaction? How do we do it? And I'll throw that out to you as well.
Interesting, very interesting. And let me go back to Nabil. Nabil, you talked a little bit about what to look at in terms of blockchain technologies as it relates to e-commerce, but what would be, in your opinion, the main challenges for the industry that you're seeing when it comes to blockchain adoption? And also, what are the most disruptive technologies for supply chains that we can expect to see in the next 5 years?
Well, so let's start with maybe the challenges of the industry. And I don't think it's only in the logistic and supply chain industry, but I think few industries are similar. I think the first one is knowledge and understanding. You know, I think 2017 for the technology was very important, and it was mainly driven by the media and the Bitcoin inflation of the price. If you look at Google search in 2017, how to buy Bitcoin was the #1 how-to in the world. So that's quite impressive in regards to the media attention. And of course, when people were talking about crypto, then they look and then they start to raise awareness around the technology. But the knowledge, really the technical knowledge, application knowledge, and even the use case are relatively new. And there are really a limited number of people that are knowledgeable enough to be able to explain in simple terms what does it mean and how do you apply them. I think Gary just did a very good job on the example with the Brazilian Post because of the data sharing that has value. I think from the gentleman before we heard about payment. Also, these are concrete examples that tell you where the value is with the technology. So I think the first one is knowledge. The second one, Gary also mentioned it, is the sharing of data and the lack of global standard. In the shipping industry, some shipping lines started to do some alliances with some of the major firms. I'm not going to mention here, but top 3 shipping lines, top 3 software company in the world. But when they try to convince the number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8 in terms of size and scale, there was the problem of IP. Who is going to control the standard? Who is going to drive the standard? And then there is a block. So they were not able to bring other key players of the industry to participate with them and to basically share data. So that's really a big problem. It's not going to work if you try to look at the entire scope. You have to start step by step through different steps of the process because, again, the number of stakeholders, the complexity of the different regulation across the globe, different entities, the legal ecosystem really makes it very complicated for you to put a standard when the industry is working for many, many years without standard. So I think standardization is also a key topic. And I think the third one, I mean, there are others, right? Culture of companies and all that. But I think the third one is technology legacy. So most of the industry is really operating on very expensive systems that have been built a long time ago, but are today operating large-scale businesses that if they would be failing for a very short time, you would have a huge loss for these companies and eventually a bankrupt. That's why many companies are not changing their systems, not because they don't want. So you have also a technology landscape that is very old and that has challenges to integrate emerging technologies. You probably wondered why when you go to a major airline at the counter and you ask for a price, the person is typing like for 10 minutes when you could take your phone and you probably get the answers before on Expedia or whatever. It's because of the system. It's because they require, these are very old system. So I think I would put these 3 things as the main challenges for the industry. And again, I think it's applicable for other industries as well. Regarding, I think the second part of the question was around new technology and what are the ones that we're going to see impacting a lot, I would say, the entire economy and social landscape. I would say personal perspective, because you never get a company to agree on this thing. We could not even agree between us here, even if we would spend a week, as to what are the ones that are going to disrupt the most the world. But my view is first one, I think, is the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence in the use of the data and what we are doing with that data from a consumer behavior perspective. So how we get information, what type of content do we get, why are we getting highly personalized content in regards to whatever you want to buy, or ideology, politics, whatever it is. So I think that's something that is has a lot of good aspect, but also potentially some risks. The second one, I think, and in my view, is the one that is coming the fastest and the most impactful, is autonomous driving, autonomous vehicles. I think we are not yet sizing the impact that it would have from giving time to the people up to the ability for cities to be better organized, the impact that it's going to have into the auto industry and all the other industries that are related to the automotive industry, and also all the time that you will get back instead of driving, and that you will be able to use. I think that's going to be the next one. And I think when we look more like 10 years, I think we're going to see then robotics and technology like blockchain that are going to be the ones that are coming. But I think that's more 10 years really play before it has a truly significant impact in society.
Yeah, I typically like to focus on what we're doing right and how to improve it. But I'm still interested in Gary, what do you think are the challenges ahead over the next 5 years when it comes to blockchain?
You have to follow the money. And we talk about data and we talk about software and we talk about blockchain, which is basically data and software, artificial intelligence or machine learning. But look at mechanization. We're still moving boxes on pallets with forklifts, which is a tremendous misuse of assets. We were worried at one time that machines were going to replace humans, but we've reached almost full employment in Miami-Dade County and have a difficult time getting humans. So there are some functions that need to start to mechanize, automate, where humans and machines can interact, and the humans can do the more sophisticated processes, but there are processes, finger-crushing processes, if you will, that don't need to be done by humans. And we are now looking at how do we adopt, based on our data and our knowledge that we've acquired, how do we start to mechanize? So the real use of blockchain is when we start to mechanize, when we eliminate the forklift as the delay. We can measure, weigh, take a photograph, scan documents, and tag a pallet in 32 seconds. But it takes a forklift 5 minutes to move it. With a box, it's 11 seconds, but it takes a conveyor 2 days to move. That doesn't make sense. Right. So at some point in time, we have to go that far. We have to go to the mechanization of the industry to speed up the process and use the humans for what you really need the humans for. I'm not talking about eliminating. We keep on growing our payroll, but we're growing our payroll and mechanizing at the same time and growing our business. So I see that the big disruptor is going to be how to move merchandise. Years ago when we started the .com era, we knew how to vaporize merchandise. We just couldn't make it reappear somewhere else. We need to get there. We need to get to be able to move merchandise differently than what they did in the 1950s. And we still move merchandise the same exact way.
Nabil, I know you've got to go, so thank you for being part of the panel. And I'm just going to have, I guess, one last question as we're approaching the 2:30 mark for Maurice, and that is, again, I mentioned to the audience that Miami International Airport is currently the only airport to have been designated a pharmaceutical hub. What's the importance of that to these kinds of emerging technologies?
I want to make sure we clarify pharmaceutical hub in the United States.
I'm sorry, in the United States.
The other airport is in Brussels, and we've since partnered with them to do Pharma.Aero. And within that, we've created a good collaboration between airport, airlines, as well as manufacturers within this environment, as well as industry, And 3 major pharmaceutical companies are also on board, which are Pfizer, Merck, and I believe Johnson & Johnson. So you have the big boys and the big players are actually playing in this industry. Can you go back to the second part of that question again if your internet is still up?
It's not. But basically, for us to understand, and I know, for example, that the airport is working on developing their own e-commerce platform as well. But I guess my question is, because the pharma is there's such a huge return on transporting pharma, and I'm trying to understand how important is these kinds of technologies like blockchain to ensuring that we move these kinds of freight efficiently, but also in a way that adds more value.
Well, you're looking at moving it more efficiently. You need to move it safely. You need to also move it securely. But it creates a good environment for you to operate in that. And the same thing in regards to the cargo side of the house. Me being on the passenger people moving side of the house, we realize one thing: we're still conducting business today as we had 50 years ago. And with the advent of technology, we find it very hard that while we have not transformed yet to get to that point where we can actually make this a lot more efficient. And what you're looking at are truly efficiencies. And with the advent of these technologies, and I'm going to call them another version of disruptive technology because it's changing the process and the way we look to do business, by implementing that, there has to be some level of an efficiency to be gained from it. We're having a conversation earlier in regards to looking at time to market, and I announced the other day when I was having a meeting in Singapore that we're looking at decreasing times and being a little bit more efficiently. So if I could save you 2 days in transport time, if I can go ahead and save in some additional efficiencies, what does that do for the industry? I think it adds more credence, adds more value, creates more jobs, moves more product, generates more revenue, and it continues that cycle of having a strong, efficient environment in what you're dealing with today. And that's what I think that's what we're all looking for, right? You're looking at the bottom line, which is supposed to be your end game. You're looking at your profitability, but you're also looking at your level of efficiency. And within that, we now have the opportunity to bring more technology to the marketplace, applying it to the industry a little bit more, and therefore looking at the overarching theme was what started this was what we call digital transformation. How are we changing the overarching environment as it sits today? And I think that's what helps all of this.
Agreed. And then I'll just ask Gary one last question. I know you mentioned that you're working on this pre-clearance with Brazil, and I know this is at we're sort of in the early stages of that, but tell us a little bit about sort of the traffic or clog that's happening in Brazil right now, and how this could be an important technology for that use.
I think we can actually wrap the airport into this. It happened because Miami International Airport helped us be able to achieve this. But you're looking at two customs entities, U.S. and Brazil, who are looking at certain specific data. The airport was looking at certain specific data. Cargo, whether it's cargo or passenger, it doesn't matter. You have to recognize each package. Historically, we were moving a pallet to a truck by ocean to a destination, a pallet back to a warehouse, and then small pieces. Life has changed. Disruptive life has changed. So now we move a pallet into a bunch of little pieces, cross-border, and we have to identify them and deliver them in an intelligent amount of time. Currently, if you buy e-commerce in Brazil from an outside source, you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks minimum to get delivery.
You're talking about clearance.
Clear delivery to your house if you're in São Paulo. Now, if you're in the Amazonas somewhere, it's going to be 8 to 10 weeks. What we have done is we've pushed the onus on us, and we pre-clear here. And it's already up and running. It's just we're working on beta, but we pre-clear here by sending a packet of information, of all the information that the post office and customs is going to need ahead of time. When the package flies 6 hours later, 8 hours later, 10 hours later, it's a domestic package. Gets delivered to the post office delivers the merchandise. With U.S. Customs involved, with Miami International Airport involved, with the airline involved, with Brazilian Customs involved, and with the Brazilian Post Office involved. If we don't quickly migrate into a blockchain or distributed ledger environment, we're going to very quickly max out. But if we migrate into ledger posting, if you will, or sharding, or there's a whole bunch of new names for the same technology, as we migrate, we can scale. We had a meeting at the airport 2 days ago with the port director from Customs who told us he wants to share more information with us because he wants us to look at the same thing he looks at so that he can interact properly with the things that are important and discard or not have to look at things that don't cross his path. That requires ledgers. That requires some sort of cross-platform visibility. So this is very, very, very necessary. Is it going to look exactly like Bitcoin? No, I don't like the fact that we're associated with Bitcoin to that extent, because Miami-Dade County is a tourist town, Nobody sees the fact that we're a business town because everybody thinks we're a tourist town. Bitcoin does the same thing. You know, oh, it's currency, and it's a currency not associated to a government, so, you know, it's somehow gray, rather than look at the technology behind it and look at what we can do with it with regards to e-commerce, with regards to airport and facial recognition of passengers, so on and so forth. I mean, the technology behind, or the pieces of the technology behind, are tremendously valuable.
Agreed.
And I'm going to plug in Matthew simply because I think what he's doing is tremendous. If you can continue to lead this and lead us into staying as a coalesced group, I think we can lead the industry.
I agree. I think the Florida Blockchain Foundation, great effort by Mathieu. This is an important technology for us. As we said, Miami is one of those logistics hubs or transportation hub that's ready for this kind of new technology. And I think the Florida Blockchain Foundation is doing its role in advocacy, informing us. We thank you guys, for many of you who've traveled from out of state to be here. I think it shows the importance of Miami sort of taking that leap. And I thank the two of you and Nabil for helping to answer some of these questions. So before I close, maybe there are some questions out in the audience. If there are, looks like there is in the back.
Wilson, gotta get you a member of the foundation soon.
Yeah, Matthew, and this is for you too, but for the whole group. I hope that in this whole process, that we're so early, we also create some track for the people that are going to be impacted by all these changes, either through retraining, education, or finding a new position in which they could be needed. Because what's really needed is the subject matter experts. I mean, I know there's systems and processes, but there's a lot of people that have relationships already, and those are extremely valuable. So we need to create for that. Talent never retires. And we need to make space for that, beyond technology, beyond strategy, but the human aspect is really what makes things work.
It's a great statement, and I had a similar conversation not too long ago about pain points within this industry as a whole, and realizing one thing, that intellectual property as we sit today is walking out the door as we transform. You have the entrance of new entities and new individuals coming into this industry that want a challenge, and they're not committed to the same organizations anymore, so that level of retention may not be there as it once was. But realize one thing, with the advent of new technology, whether we're talking autonomous vehicles, whether we're talking about blockchain, whether we're talking about robotics, there is a paradigm shift in regards to how we structure that resource. And if you look at Miami as a whole, yes, you say we're a tourist town. Being a tourist, the majority of the jobs are mostly working in hotels. Now you're looking at transforming that you want more higher paying jobs, you want more technical individuals, and that's why I love to see that there's a lot more tech startups coming about, that you're transforming what Miami-Dade County looks like. Yes, we're tourism, but we also have a technology center. We also bring in more high level of business into this environment. However, we look at when you're bringing in new levels of technology, yes, you need to retool staff, but if you are forward-thinking enough to realize that you're going through this digital transformational phase, that you're planning and working with your staff members to retool and retrain them rather than looking to make them redundant. So the onus is also on the employer as well, but realizing, yes, it is an issue and it is a concern in every environment.
So if I can add to that, because I didn't mean to disregard humans. We have 120 employees in Miami-Dade County, run about 300,000 square feet. All of our employees, from the oldest employee, me, on down, have been trained technically and technologically. We continue to educate our employees. All of our employees make way above minimum wage, and They've been with us for many, many, many years. As we automate and as we mechanize, we give them better jobs with better pay, with more responsibility, with more education. I'm talking about people in their 70s and 80s running computers, which they're not really, we're not educated on computers. So yeah, we all are educating, we're moving our employees forward, but not to the point where they need to do things that are harmful to them.
And also one way to achieve that goal of forming appropriately the new workforce is to work like we do with the industry and try to understand what are the pain points and where is the industry going, so we can create the right curriculum for universities. That's why with the Beacon Council we always associate the 7 universities of the Academic Leadership Council to us, and what we are doing right now is important because it allows to open the conversation on specific knowledge that will be needed in the coming years. So this is something that we are also aware of.
Okay, well, thank you again, Mathieu, for a great conference, and thank you, panelists, for
Thank you very
being
much.
here with us.